Good evening, everybody. I'm Alec Caberna. Joined with me today for the start of the holidays, Mike Wolfgang. No Matt Morrison in the booth this week, but you know what? We can carry the show on our own. Who needs Matt?
Oh, we've got it. We've done it how many times before that, Matt? We don't need him.
That's for sure. We got a lot to go over today, though. I mean, we had a crazy sports weekend. We've had a few upsets along the way. Villanova lost for the fourth time. Mike, I know you've been really high on them as we're going to get into our college basketball rankings a little bit later today. I know you've been really high on them all season. Have they finally fallen out of that top 10, though, for you?
For me, last week they were borderline, like you saw through my rankings. But, you know, 4-loss team, I can't put them in the top 10 because there's teams behind them that have 2 losses. Like I put USC in, I put Iowa State up there. So, I mean, and even Michigan State. So there's teams that you can argue that should be in the top 10. And to me,
USC, Iowa State, LSU is still undefeated and has gotten no respect so far. I mean, you got teams like Arizona, Alabama, Kansas, even Providence is still a 1-loss team, and I don't even think they're ranked right now. Xavier, I think, is in pretty much the same boat along with Seton Hall. I mean, I think Seton's at 16 right now, but I mean, we got a lot of great teams right now, not necessarily in what we would call the Power 5 conferences or even our blue bloods of the sport. That would be Villanova. We got a lot of other teams trying to make a claim this week, and you know, it should be an exciting March Madness this year because you've already seen so many upsets. And, you know, I can't remember a college basketball season that this early on, we were seeing so many big teams going down every single night. I mean, we're having buzzer beater after upset pretty much every night right now in college basketball.
Yeah, and to add to the teams that you were talking about, these are Power 5s. I mean, the one is you got Auburn's 10-1, you got Houston and the American, they're 10-2, and you mentioned Seton Hall, and you know, even Ohio State, they've had some postponed games, but they're 8-2, and they haven't won against Duke. So, I mean, not to say Villanova can't. I mean, they're just hitting a rough spot right now. They have the guys to do it. They have the coaching to do it. But just right now, they're hitting a rough spot. And it
reminds you of what was it, Kentucky last year. I mean, they had a fantastic roster, but they just couldn't find a way to win the game.
And it was too late.
And it was too late by the time they figured it out. So, I mean, I think we're in for a very exciting finish to December, start to the new year in college basketball, and then obviously. By the time we're talking in the next 2 weeks about, you know, a little bit more college basketball, we're going to be getting down into 3 months until March Madness. So we're not that far away. Yes, there's a long way to go for these teams, but time is running out to start your season on the right note. So a lot of these teams are going to have to get back on the winning side of things. I mean, I think most of the time out of the big name teams, the lowest you can pretty much have as in your loss department, you really need to be under 10. So when you're those big name teams, because while there is 64 spots in it, there is, I think, over 200 teams that get in, or, you know, 200 teams that are vying for those 64 spots. So there's a lot of games, but these teams are going to have to start finding winning ways very soon. And obviously, Nova not out of the race. They can win out from here on and be perfectly fine, probably get a 1 seed come March or a 2 seed. So no reason to panic. But yeah, they do need to start winning because we haven't seen them get those wins against big games like we know they can.
Yeah, especially when these teams start conference play. I mean, they're starting, you know, you started it now, you're kind of in and out with it now, still playing some out of conference. But, you know, at this point in the holiday season, you start getting past the holidays, you're going to start playing these big conference games. And I think that's where Villanova, at least in the past, that's where they've played good, because of Big East, it's not a Power 5, but
I think the Big East still, this season might be one to look out for. I mean, you got Creighton, Providence, Xavier, St. John's as your top, and then also Seton Hall, UConn, Marquette, and Nova. I mean, you look at this conference right now, this is the one to watch. And don't count Butler out either. They're still 7-4.
Yeah.
I mean, DePaul is 9-1, Marquette 8-4, UConn 9-3. We got a lot of teams. This Big East might be the strongest it's been in the last decade.
Oh yeah, and it's been good the last few years, but it's another level this year. Definitely.
I mean, everyone right now, before this conference play starts, is dominating on a whole nother level. They have Power 5 wins. I mean, Xavier beat Ohio State. Obviously, Seton Hall and Providence have been absolutely rolling. Marquette has a big win on there so far, and we're going to see a big game here tonight in the Big East that we're going to get to later. UConn versus Marquette to start off. That'll be tomorrow, but we're going to talk about it later on today's show. This is our college basketball show here for Monday, but we're going to throw some other stuff in there because college football, bowl season, we're talking bowl games every single day. So a lot to look forward to. We got Christmas Day games coming up on Saturday for NFL, NHL, NBA is a huge day for the Christmas. So a lot of things we're going to get to here. Matt will be on the show this week when he can come. But without any further ado, let's get to our first college football game of the day. It's our one and only, the Myrtle Beach Bowl between Tulsa and Old Dominion. Old Dominion barely bowl eligible, 6-6, but so was Tulsa. They were also 6-6. Tulsa right now, the line, they're an 8-point favorite according to FanDuel Sportsbook. First meeting between these two teams, and we've seen this Tulsa squad really roll a lot this season. They've had a lot of big games, but they just didn't play consistent when they weren't going against big opponents. I mean, you saw that Ohio State game in Oklahoma State really to start out their season. The 5-point loss to Oklahoma State, and then, yes, a 21-point loss to Ohio State, but that game was very close for that first half, and it took until Ohio State, that third, fourth quarter, to start pulling away. You saw this team upset Memphis. They took down USF. They were an 8-point loss to Cincinnati. They beat SMU, a team we have been high on all season. They beat Temple. They beat Tulane. Their wins were good, and they had some close losses, but you've also seen this team not be able to close out in big moments. That's what I'm looking for here tonight. Actually, here in about 25 minutes, they start at 2:30 for the Myrtle Beach Bowl. And Old Dominion, they don't really have any big games on the season. They've really exploded in the points department twice, and it was in the last 4 weeks. They went up 47 points against Florida International and then Charlotte, a team that I actually thought was decent this year. Coming out of the FCS. They beat them 56-34 in the final week of the season to become bowl eligible. But I like this matchup between these two teams because I think both of them lack consistency. And when we talk bowl games, normally it's the team that has the most consistency that can win these games. Although we've already seen a chaotic start to bowl season. We all pretty much went 5-4 in this last week predicting the start of the bowling season. And the only 3 games we got right were Coastal Carolina, Fresno State, Raging Cajuns. We were all separated on the rest of them. Jackson State got absolutely shocked by SC State, despite the fact that this Jackson State squad is loaded with talent that are all NFL caliber guys. And so we're seeing upsets coming out of nowhere. I mean, UAB dominated BYU, and you saw Utah State take down Oregon State, which is always weird to see group of 5 teams going up against big Power 5 schools and actually be able to pull away with the win. And we've already seen some chaos to start the year. I'm looking for some more this week. Obviously, we got the Myrtle Beach Bowl to start things off. We have the Idaho Potato Bowl, the Frisco Bowl, the Armed Forces Bowl, the Gasparilla Bowl, the Frisco Football Classic, the Hawaii Bowl, and the Camellia Bowl this week. So we got a lot of things to go over as we continue to move. Mike, what are your thoughts between these two teams here?
So I was looking at Old Dominion's schedule when you were running through Tulsa's, and I was going to go to that point but you took it. It's Old Dominion's their level of what they've done this year is pretty much the same as Tulsa. They haven't really been able to finish games, and they had the game against which one was I looking at? UTEP. I mean that was a game they lost by a touchdown. They lost to they hung in there with Western Kentucky. That a team we just saw win a bowl game the other day, and it's just a matter of both these teams are 6-6. They didn't really find ways to close out games this year, but they were competitive in most of them. Not all of them, but most of them, and especially more so with Tulsa. But for them being on the same level, at the same record, and the same pace, Tulsa's a 7.7. They're getting 7.5. They're giving 7.5 to Old Dominion, so they see something there that's different. Probably more competitive advantage towards Tulsa, based on the season. So, but it's still evenly matched, and I think it's going to be a fun one to watch. The only bowl game today in college football, so. I think
and it's starting here in about half an hour. So I hear we're actually 21 minutes from now. So I guess we got to go ahead and make our picks here. Mike, what are you thinking, Tulsa or Old Dominion?
So going off my sheet here, I showed you guys the other day. I had Tulsa in this game. That's who I picked, and it just goes to what I just said. I mean, I think they've shown more not consistency, but ability to hang in games and battle in games, and I think that'll play to their advantage in this one. So I got Tulsa.
It's kind of funny. Both these teams both had the same record in conference, 5-3 for Old Dominion, 5-3 for Tulsa. But Tulsa had those stronger out-of-conference games. I mean, they won just 1 out of those 4 out-of-conference. And, I mean, they were tough. They wanted that hard schedule. They wanted to be able to compete. And it's put them at this point in the season where they're 6-6. I do think they are the better team and that they're going to win this game. That's who I'm going to make my pick. But expect the Monarchs to stay in this one. I expect a competitive game out of these squads. But I got Tulsa rolling. They wanted that strength of schedule because they believe they could win those games. And obviously, it'll bring in a lot of money for their school against those big opponents. I felt like Old Dominion, some of their out-of-conference games were a little bit on the weaker side. So I'm going with strength of schedule here, and I'm taking Tulsa. Yeah,
and I mean, the good thing with Old Dominion, they beat a Middle Tennessee team that just beat Toledo in a bowl game that nobody really expected them to beat. So I guess that's one thing they have to hang their hat on. And a Middle Tennessee team that, I mean, I'm looking at their record this year. They weren't that bad. I mean, they were about the same level.
Middle Tennessee to win that game too.
I did. So again, they can hang their hat on that.
You were the only one out of us. I was taking the MAC conference to win, and I really liked their conference, but they didn't pull through.
Yeah, they were favorites going in. I knew that, but you got to pick some upsets in these lesser known bowl games, I guess if that's the right word. But I feel Tulsa in this one.
All right, well, let's go ahead into the college basketball top 10. Before we start ours, I'll give the quick rundown of the AP top 10 there. USC at 10, Nova at 9, Arizona at 8, Kansas at 7, Alabama at 6, Gonzaga at 5, UCLA at 4, Purdue at 3, Duke at 2, and Baylor at 1. That is the official college basketball AP top 10 there. So, without any further ado, our number 10 team this week, the Alabama Crimson Tide. They're coming off another strong week of basketball. They really just continued to perform about how we all expected, but, they do slide down a little bit. But they had a loss earlier this week or right at the end of last week. But to me, this is a very strong team, and I like everything they've been doing so far. They seem to have a complete team. They are 9-2, and they lost to Memphis, but we were high on that Memphis team to start the season, and they kind of fell off early. They were a top 10 team to begin with, I believe, and now they're coming back around. They get the win over Alabama just a couple nights ago, so Alabama's going to slide down as a result of it, and I'm actually going to potentially put Alabama on upset watch again tonight against Steph Curry's home team, the Davidson Wildcats. So they're a good team, but I'm waiting for them to slip up again.
Yeah, I'm waiting for some of these mostly teams in the top 10 to slip up. It's some of them are playing good basketball, but it's kind of like, when are they going to slip up, or just a matter of when it's going to happen. But with Alabama, they have the two. I had them at 6 or 7, I think, in mine, 6, because they beat a Gonzaga team that was 3. They beat a Houston team that was 3, and like you said, I'm not going to really penalize them that much for that Memphis loss, because it's a team we were kind of talking up a little bit. And this Memphis team went by Penny Hardaway. They have talent on their roster, and this was a close game for most of it.
Potential number 1 overall pick in Amoni Bates. I mean, he is one of the highest recruited high school prospects. So, I mean, Amoni Bates is a huge part of that team. So, I mean, anytime you see this Memphis squad going up, it's no guarantee for anybody.
Yeah, and it's they've been competitive under Penny Hardaway, and like you said, the recruits are starting to get in. They're hanging in with some of these teams. They're beating teams like Alabama that they're pretty loaded top to bottom too, and the way their lineups and the way they use guys on the floor, but. I'm not going to penalize them too much for that. I don't have a problem with them being a 10, but I had them at 6. I still think that they're one of the better teams, but that's where I kind of had them.
All right, yeah. I mean, I had Alabama at 10 last week, and obviously the loss for me, I had to drop them out, and I thought there were some other teams that undefeated squads I want to put in here early, because I feel like we got some teams potentially, especially in LSU, who I had as my 10 seed this week, undefeated on the season. They've been playing some good basketball, a good strength of schedule, no huge wins, but they've been playing consistently through it. So I didn't have Alabama in this week. They just narrowly get in. We had a lot of teams vying for this 10th spot. I mean, I think in total there was LSU, Alabama was in there, and the one other I think was Villanova.
I had Iowa State
potentially as well. Yeah, Iowa State. You got barely cut by you and Mike, you and Matt. You guys both had them at 10. I had Iowa State up at 3, so they're a lot higher up in this rankings than you guys had them. I'm very high on them right now. I like that squad. But let's go into number 9 here on the list, the Trojans of USC. This is just another team that has had a great start to the season. Obviously, Matt's very high on the other Mobley brother, so this is a team that will continue to go up our rankings. They beat UC Irvine. We had them on a potential upset watch, and that was warranted. It was a 5-point game, so clearly we were doing our research a little bit right there to pick that game as a potential upset last Wednesday. But the fact that they pulled out the win in that game, and it was a close one against Georgia Tech, and maybe it shouldn't have been, but this team has started 13-0, and I don't care if you're 13-0 and those games have all been 1-point wins, to be able to start the season 13-0 and pull out close games. That's what everybody forgets when you talk about these close ones. It means they can finish. Sometimes you see teams like Gonzaga or Villanova, they have all the talent in the world and they can win games. They can put up a lot of points. But if you put them in close situations, they don't have that man that can take over and finish sometimes. And USC has shown that they have that all around, and that they're not afraid to go down there and fight with you for the length of a ball game and try and pull out a win in the last minute, because that's what they have done all season. And they continue to pull out, these tight ball games, and they have a hard contest coming up. They got Oklahoma State, Arizona State, and Arizona in their next 3 games. So a huge slate of games that they're starting Pac-12 play. I'm very interested to see what USC continues to do this season.
Yeah, and it's, I was just going to go with the games they have coming up, but I'm going to stay with the games they already played. Yeah, some of these teams aren't, like you said, aren't the best opponents, but you still found ways to win games. That you have to do that, and they're 12-0. They obviously found ways to win games. That to me, that matters more than destroying these teams, right? Because you know that you can't just go to any game and blow anybody out because you actually have to earn some of these wins. And especially in the Pac-12, it's starting to become somewhat better of a conference in college basketball over the last year.
They were ranked last to start out the year, and right now you look at their teams and you go, well, Arizona's strong, USC is strong. They're getting a very large top right now. I'm worried about that collapse once they get into that conference play because you see it all the time in the Big Ten. You have great teams to start out the year, then they just start beating the crap out of each other for the next 2 months. And then you see all these teams just flat out exhausted and injured by the time they get to March Madness. I'm worried of a similar letdown right now with the Pac-12.
Yeah. And again, with USC, to put them at, I think we have them at 9 to be undefeated. Some of the recruits they have. I mean, I know Matt loves the Mobley brother. I like him too. He was overshadowed by his brother last year, but he's starting to come into his own this year. And, combine that all, they deserve to be in definitely top 10, but we have them at 9. I'm fine with that.
We all actually put them at number 9 in this week's ranking. So, they were one of the few teams that we have agreed upon this entire season. The other ones have been Baylor and UCLA. Those are the only 3 teams that we have all consistently sitting in the same spot. So right now there's a lot of shuffling, a lot of good teams out there. With that being said, here's one of my favorites on the early season, Iowa State. I mean, you look at what they've done. They had some really weird games, and I really want to look at that Jackson State game just a couple nights ago on previous week Sunday, 37-47 against Jackson State. Weird game, but they won it, and that's what matters. Even if you have an off night, can you avoid having that fluke game? And they have done that so far, and they have wins over Iowa, a team we were high on to start the season. Creighton, a team we're still high on right now. Memphis,
2 top 25 wins. Yeah.
Right. 2 top 25 wins for them. So right now I'm in love with this Iowa State team. I think they have just all the talent and they're playing for each other right now. And I mean, they're getting multiple guys in double digits every night, whether it's Isaiah Brockington, Caleb Grill, and Ajaz Kunk. I mean, they're getting so many guys just playing their hearts out, and they have an easy one tomorrow against Chicago State, but we've seen them slip up a few times. You never know what Iowa State's going to do. But after that, they have Baylor, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Kansas in their next 4 games. This is what I always call the meat and potatoes of that schedule. If they make it through here, I probably have this team sitting at number 1 or number 2, depending on what happens around them. I mean, Baylor, as long as they win out, they're probably still number 1 for as long as they won it. But that Baylor-Iowa State game, if Iowa State pulls that upset there, I probably have Iowa State going into number 1 to start the new year.
Yeah, and they're getting good scoring out of their backcourt, and Isaiah Brockington starting a small forward. He's a guy that was at Penn State, and he has some things to offer. He can, like I said, he could score, he could play defense. So they're getting a lot out of the guys. And you mentioned the 2 top 25 wins. I mean, you got to love it. And I mean, what else you got to do to be in the top 10? That's right. That's part of the criteria in being in and
undefeated.
Part
so
of the rankings.
You got
undefeated too. And Big 12. I'm kind of trying to pull up how they've been this year.
They've been okay. I mean, nothing amazing. I mean, obviously Kansas is at the top. Iowa State and Baylor, they've had a fine top. They're starting to slide down a little bit at the bottom, but I mean, all the teams still have winning records in conference, so that's not something you can say about every conference so far in the season. And they have a strong top. Even TCU coming up on that schedule is going to be dangerous around the league because TCU is also taking on Kansas here in a few weeks as well. TCU has a big chance to not only join the top 25, potentially even our top 10, if they can win out through these next few games, because they're going to have Iowa State and Kansas both on the schedule coming up. So, I mean, if Iowa State pulls the upset over Baylor, which I think is very much possible, and then you see this TCU team take down Iowa State and Kansas, it's very possible in the next 3 weeks we have a new number 1 and even a completely different top 10 than we have right now. We're so early in the season, nothing is set in stone.
Oh, yeah, especially with, the top 1 seed, 2 seed. You see it all the time.
Seen, 2, 3 number 1 seeds go down already this year?
Yeah, it changes so often in college basketball because it's more likely to have upsets in college basketball. But yeah, I mean, once they start playing Baylor and teams like that start getting into conference play, that's a little concerning for Iowa State because we want to see them in those situations. We talk about it all the time. We want to see them in that, get a win like that and then try to build off that and keep
especially
going.
Especially on the road. Got to get those road games.
Road ones are tough. Yeah, road ones are tough. But in the Big 12 especially, you got bad, tough environments like Kansas. Nobody wants to play there. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's talking about Kansas. They're number 7 on our rankings this week. They've had a great start. And what did they do, Mike? They avoided the upset against SFA, a team that just 2 seasons ago took down number 1 Duke in overtime. I mean, this is a team that started 8-4 to the season up until this point. You had Kansas coming in 9-1. Kansas, they did everything right to finish out this game. I mean, the Lumberjacks were down by just 7 going into halftime, and then you saw Kansas really just not let that lead get any smaller. They outscored them by just 1 point in the second half of basketball, but you just saw them continue to fight. They answered every single shot by SFA, and you can't ask for anything more, even if they're having a bad night, which you kind of look at it, and they kind of did defensively, allowing 70-plus points to the SFA team. But you've seen this Kansas team. Their defense hasn't been great, but you look at their offense, they have been perfect on the other side. And going back to game 1 against Michigan State, their defense let up 74. They still scored 87. And then their next big game, their offense struggled and the defense did as well. And they lost to Dayton on November 26th by just 1 point. They beat that Iona team that we have liked so far. Then they win by 20 over St. John's, and St. John's still scored 75. Then just earlier last week, we saw them put up 102 points against Mizzou. And you've seen this team time and time again. Their defense struggles, but they have the offense to continue to fight all the way down. That's what I like about Kansas right now.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You look at the way they've been scoring. But, I mean, you probably want to see one thing to critique with them is see their defense get tighten up a little bit,
right.
Start allowing less amount of points. But, I mean, they're showing they can score the ball like anybody else in the country. So that's one thing to their advantage. But, you know, coming up tomorrow, they got Colorado. That's kind of going to be a tough one. Colorado can play. And, you know,
we're going to look about that one actually in a little bit. So
yeah,
we're talking about that one for a little bit later.
Yeah, and then they got a Harvard game. Then they start conference play with all those tough games we talked about with Iowa State. So you're going to see a tough race come down with all these teams in the Big 12. It's every team in general. But yeah, that's my thing with Kansas. I want to see them start to tighten up on defense because you know their offense is there.
Right. Well, let's go back into the Pac-12 here, number 6 on the rankings, Arizona. Mike, they did nothing wrong the last week. They really didn't get much of a push in the rankings. We've all pretty much liked them so far. They're about where they were last week. So, I mean, nothing bad, nothing great about them, but they continue to be the hottest scoring team in college basketball. I believe they're still number 1 when it comes to points per game. They obviously had 101 points against Northern Colorado last Wednesday. They had 84 against California Baptist. Really much the same thing with them. Defense, I want to see a little bit better, but they've been doing just fine because of how electric that offense is. Yeah,
and this is a team that I guess you kind of, for me, I was somewhat sleeping on because I didn't really pay attention to that much until they played that Illinois team. And they won that one close. And then, you know, you start seeing them what they've done this year, what they've done since then. I know against some lesser opponents the last 2 games, but yeah, they were pretty impressive in that Illinois game. So they caught my attention.
Yeah, they're catching people's attention. I just want to see them continue to push, and they're going to have some more difficult games coming up, especially once they hit that Pac-12 schedule. I want to see if they can continue putting up that level of points against some Pac-12 big-name teams. But moving on here, number 5, Gonzaga. They got back in the win column. That's what they needed after the Alabama loss. I mean, I think we were kind of questioning them in these last 2 weeks. What is this Gonzaga team? Because we saw them lose twice in their 2 big games. Obviously, they still have a win over UCLA. They have wins over Texas. So they have their good wins, and now they have 2 bad losses. But they got back in the win column on Saturday against a top 25 Texas Tech, and that's what I wanted to see was them go in there and dominate the way that we knew they could because this is a really good team. And you saw their 2 top guys, Timmy and Holmgren, held to just 12 points through nearly, 53 minutes played between those 2. They held them to just 12 points, but they had other guys step up. Anton Watson had 10. Rasir Bolton had 15. Andrew Nembhard, who was a great talent, played 40 minutes in this game and got 16 points. So they had other guys step up, and I think that's what we were waiting for Gonzaga because it has been the Timmy and Chet show so far, and it was time for somebody else to do something. They finally did, and that's why Gonzaga won this game because their stars were down. They played, frankly, terrible in that game, and they needed help, and they finally got it. And I'm interested to see what Gonzaga can continue to do. The next week, I pretty much can guarantee they're going to be number 1 or in this top 10 probably until January 13th. They have a cupcake schedule to walk through. Northern Arizona, North Alabama, San Diego, LMU, San Francisco, actually. The Dons still just a one-loss team. They finally fell once again. That's on January 6th. That's the next toughest matchup for Gonzaga. And even after that, it's Pepperdine. BYU should be a tough one. But, I mean, Santa Clara, Pacific, LMU, Portland. I just read off their next 2 months, and none of these guys are in the top 25, and I doubt they're even in the top 40 right now for college basketball. Gonzaga does not have a ranked matchup left on the season, so they pretty much are locked where they are unless they suck somehow in conference, which I don't see happening. This was a team that was in the Final Four in the national championship last year, and they came up just short of Baylor. I imagine there's a good chance we see a rematch this year if they can get those cylinders to start firing with Timmy and Chet in conference play.
Yeah, and like you said, that's a big one for them to get because that is their last, at least of right now, that's their last top 25 matchup. So that's a big one to get. But
watch out for the Dons, though. Who knows?
It is. And I'll tell you what, I know they're not always usually that good, but watch out for St. Mary's when they play them at the end of the year. Twice within a span of 2 weeks, I think. So we'll see with Gonzaga.
It's a dangerous team, and that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's continue to move on here in the rankings. We have at number 4, UCLA. The Bruins are in action. They got a good season so far. I had them higher up. I know they have that bad loss early in the season, but I mean, they're still just an 8-1 team, and they've had some good wins. To me, Mike, I know you guys don't have them nearly as high as I do in this rankings. Actually, never mind. We all have UCLA at 4. I had them actually a little higher. I pushed them back because I was just thinking, man, this team hasn't done much. I'm interested to see what they do, though. 10 days time, they have a huge break, a 19-day break between their last matchup, which was Marquette on the previous weekend, Saturday. And they don't play again until December 30th against Arizona to start out that real Pac-12 play for the rest of the season. So it's going to be a huge matchup. Whichever one of that probably is a top 3 team in the next month or so. But it's going to be a while before we talk UCLA basketball because December 30th, next time they come up, they're going to sit here at 4 probably the next few weeks unless teams around them either fall or play amazing because they don't have to do anything right now. They just get to sit back, watch, enjoy their holidays.
Yeah, so there's really not a whole lot to break down, but yeah, you deserve to be high on them because I mean what they've done to close out last season, what they've done to start out this year 8-1, they deserve where they're at. I'll give you that.
I think the one thing I look at with this UCLA team is that game against Gonzaga. I mean, you saw them actually play a tough opponent and they struggled. So I'm worried about them the rest of the season, especially that Arizona game. I think they're going to lose that one and it probably drops them back in my books to about 8 or 9 because I just haven't seen them in that big game play to what I know they can be. I mean, you have guys like Johnny Uzang, and he can put up tons of points, and he's a top talent coming out of college basketball in the next year or two. So I'm interested to see if UCLA can get things back together through this 19-day break and come back strong and look like the team that we all had them touted to be to start out the year.
Yep, we'll see.
Pac-12, as we were just talking about, it's got a strong top, so they're going to have to
better than what it has been. That's for sure.
And right now, they're the number 1 seed going into Pac-12 play when it comes to that. So at number 3, top Big Ten team, Purdue, the Boilermakers. I mean, last week, they had one game on Saturday. It was against Butler. They slaughtered them. They took the Bulldogs out to the shed and made sure no one ever saw them again. It was 77-48. I mean, what more can you ask for to this team? 3 guys, in double-digit scoring between Travion Williams with 10, Jaden Ivey, 22 points in just 24 minutes. I love that scoring performance. And Zach Edey, 14 points, 11 rebounds for the team and team high. So they were getting contributions from all around. Obviously, to hold the team to just 48, you have to be doing something pretty well. Give credit to Butler's Bryce Golden for putting up 17 in that game and Jaden Taylor with 11, but they just couldn't score the rock, and that's going to stop you every time. And I've loved Purdue's defense in a lot of these games. They've won a lot of games for Purdue because we've seen this offense have up nights and have down nights. And so far, I mean, they have wins over UNC, Villanova, Iowa, Florida State. The one loss was an upset to Rutgers in their second game of the month, but they beat NC State. They beat Butler. They've played some rock-hard football, some rock-hard basketball recently. They've been playing great. They seem like a total team. That's what we always look for in college basketball. Can this team play as a complete, solid unit? And they have.
Yeah, and this is why I've been high on this team, and I still view them maybe second because I had them at number 2. I think Baylor's probably they are the best team in the country right now. They're playing more complete, but Purdue's not that far off in terms of playing together. Their only loss. I was the only one that didn't have Purdue at number 2. I had them all the way back at 5, which is how they got this 3 spot. It was just I want to punish teams for losing early in the year, especially in the upset. You have to penalize those upsets for me. So that's what I did. I pushed them back a little bit. It's what I did in college football season. But I still have respect to this team as a top 5 team. And if they continue to win out, I mean, they got an easy schedule coming up. So they should win against Incarnate Ward and who's the next on their schedule after Incarnate Ward? Now, I just had him at Nicholls State, a team that we were high on going against Wisconsin. Then they have Wisconsin after that. So they have a tough schedule if they can win out those first 2 games. I'm interested to see what that Wisconsin matchup can potentially look like. I think that's really the next big challenge for Purdue is getting through some of those cupcakes, avoiding the upset like they did against Rutgers, and getting down to Wisconsin, getting a battle out there. But number 2 on our list, the Duke Blue Devils. They were
unanimous at number 2, or pardon me, at number 3 besides me, who had them up at 2. And since I had Baylor, Purdue, pardon me, a little bit down, Duke got that spot there. And to me, no, they haven't done much on the season. They did lose to Ohio State, but I mean, they've been really taking care of business in the games they should have. And they still started off the year with a win over Kentucky, who is still ranked. They still have a win over Duke, who is obviously still ranked. The really only loss came to Ohio State. It's by 5. It's hard for me to penalize that when you've seen how well Ohio State has done since that game. And obviously, I'm a Buckeye fan. I'm rooting for the Buckeyes to have a great season. And you've seen Duke now in these last 3 games go for 103 against SC State, 92 against App State, and then 87 against Elon. So they've had a great stretch of games, and I'm interested to see what they can continue to do down the stretch. And, you know, they got a while before they got Clemson, Virginia Tech, and Notre Dame on the schedule. I'm not worried about those games really, but Notre Dame could pull the upset. And then, I mean, after that, ACC is pretty bad this year out of all the conferences. I'd probably say they're one of the worst of our, I'll say, Power 5 schools. So, they should have a pretty easy ride going the rest of the way. They just have to avoid the upset.
Yeah, and avoid the upset like Wednesday against Virginia Tech. They're 8-4, and I know I'm not banking on it to happen because it's at Duke, and that's a tough place to win. But that's one to watch out for too. And then you got the road games that you should win, but again, it's college basketball and it's conference play. So yeah, I like what I'm seeing from Duke right now. Like you said, they're not really impressive. I mean, they got that first win against Kentucky when they were ranked. Against Gonzaga too, and then Ohio State they barely lost, but. Right. They've done what they've had to do. So as long as they keep doing that from here on out, they're going to be fine.
Well, it's no spoiler who our number 1 is. It's Baylor. I mean, they've been great so far. They won the championship. They're number 1 until they decide they don't want to be, and that's pretty much the facts of it. So with that being said, that is our top 10 for the week. I mean, I really think a great class of guys we got going on right now. Absolutely fantastic basketball and a lot more to get down to here as we will actually move into our college basketball preview here for the next 10-15. Finish some stuff up. Monday Night Football, got a doubleheader today, NBA, NHL games. So got still a little bit to get to, so make sure to stay with us. But let's go ahead and get into the college basketball preview. First game up, this one tomorrow, Davidson Wildcats in Alabama to take on the Crimson Tide. Crimson Tide 73.2% on the matchup predictor on the ESPN BPI list to win this ball game. It's probably the safe bet, but you have seen Davidson start the season 8-2. They are on a 7-game win streak right now, despite starting the year 1-2. I mean, I think a lot of people were doubting them to come out of the gates, and a team that really hasn't seen success since Steph Curry. So what they've done, they've lost to San Francisco, the Dons, a team that I'm high on already. And no, they haven't beaten anybody yet, but the fact that they can continue to win games and shoot actually better so far field goal percentage-wise than Alabama, I think they have a chance. I think it's slim, but I got a feeling Alabama might be in trouble here.
And this game really wasn't even supposed to happen from what I understand because they scheduled this late because of some COVID issues. They were able to play each other, so they scheduled this game. And I think it's a good one for both teams to schedule, Alec. Like you said, I think it's good for Alabama to schedule this one. Number 1, to get a game because they were losing one. And number 2, it's a Davidson team that's, like you said, they have the 8 wins. They're 8-2. They're first in their, in the Atlantic 10, I think they are. Yeah. So I'm not, Alabama needs this one, I think, a lot because, you lose that game against Memphis. I know they bounce back, but, they have to continue to get good play from Shackelford and their other guys, like their assist leader, Davison. So, They need a win like this against a team that's not on their level, but a team that's has 8 wins to get this at home, so and to get back into where they want to go. So this is a big one for Alabama. Yeah,
I mean they need to win it. So with that being said, I love picking a team that's desperate. I'm taking Alabama to win this one. I'm expecting a tough game from Davidson, but you've seen Alabama so far outscore teams. And obviously, to me, it's that 91-82 game over Gonzaga for Alabama that's going to make you want to pick them every single time because you've seen how explosive this offense can be. And they held down a Gonzaga team who has a fantastic offense, and they even put up 91 off a great defense over Drew Timme and Chet Holmgren. I mean, when you got to do it like that, that's nearly 7 foot combined. In college basketball, that's a tough group to go against, and they still put up 91 points. So I have faith in Alabama scoring, but as you said, Shackelford's got to be the guy, and he's going to be the guy in this one.
Yeah, he is their guy, and with confidence in their offense scoring that you feel comfortable talking about, 83.4 points average per game for this team on offense. So I think it could be a decent game for a little bit, but I think as you see in college basketball, teams start to pull away, especially at home with Alabama, against a lesser opponent. Lesser, I don't mean to say it like that, but. I got Alabama on this one.
All right. Well, next one up, Michigan State Spartans on the road to take on the Oakland Golden Grizzlies. Pardon me, actually, they are at they're in
Oakland
Detroit,
has
Michigan
this one.
for this one. It's not East Lansing, but this is a neutral site game between the two. Oakland, obviously, they're a good team for the Horizon League. They're number one, just in front of Youngstown State, who started 7-3 this year. They've been off to a fantastic start. We're going to get down to some Youngstown State a little later in the season if they can continue to play well. And we love the way they're playing right now. They've been actually packing the house in Youngstown as well. So, but Oakland, they have been the stand of their Horizon League along with Cleveland State these last few years. And I mean, I'm looking for them tonight to actually potentially pull the upset over Michigan State. They've been a really good team. They're being led right now by a man averaging 21 points per game in Jamal Cain, as well as 10.5 rebounds, averaging 51.5% from field goal range, 3 steals, 1.5 blocks. I mean, this guy is doing everything for this team. He's a 6'7" center. I'm watching out for him in this game, especially. He is from Michigan, and you always know when you get some out of town guys that return home, they go off. I'm looking for Kane to have a big one. And as much as I love Big Ten, Michigan State's on upset alert.
Yeah, and you ran through Oakland. They're a team that normally battles it out with Northern Kentucky and teams like that in our league. So, Michigan State's they're playing a lot better. After the down year they had last year, they started out not where they wanted to this year in the rankings, and they moved themselves up. But I agree with you, Alec. This could be a game. It's somewhat tough for them. It's a neutral site. When you're a team like Michigan State playing a team like Oakland in a neutral site, it's not as easy as you think it is. So there's potential there. I'm going to stick with Michigan State, but it's a tough one. I'm very tempted to pick Oakland, but I'm going to try to be safe.
Well, Mike, I haven't been very safe when it comes to college basketball. It's hurt me a little bit, but you know what? I've done a great job evening out. My first games of the week normally suck. I'm going to keep that trend going. I'm taking Oakland in the upset. I don't know why. I like him in this ball game. I like Kane, and I think him returning into Michigan is huge. And I really think that Oakland has this chance for an upset. It's going to give a lot of credit to the Horizon League as well. And I want that for Youngstown State because, you see these two teams at the top of the standings right now in the Horizon League. You're just waiting for that matchup. And if Youngstown State can go in there against that team and actually pull off the win to start out the year, January 1st in Oakland for that game, that's going to put Youngstown State at the top of the list in the Horizon League, and they'd have a win over a team that beat Michigan State. So to me, this is more I'm playing the cards for Youngstown State. I want things to fall our way this season. We've had so much great talent, and they've always come up short in these last few years. I'm looking for them to go big this year, led by Akuche. So, he's got 13.8 points per game. What that means is this team is actually playing consistent team basketball, and that's something you can't really say in the recent years. They've been very individual in the last few years, and not this time around. They're ready to run the distance, and I want Youngstown State to play great and get this win over Oakland in the next coming weeks. And I think that starts with Oakland beating Michigan State here, giving them too much confidence to go into that Youngstown State game and fall up short. So to me, I'm playing the cards for Youngstown here, and I got Oakland taking this one.
It's pretty gutsy.
It is gutsy.
I was thinking about it, but
hey, man, we got to play the cards right for our school, right?
You do. I mean, they're better than our football team. We at least have to mention them or talk about them.
We'll get down to them at some point here soon. I got a feeling. I just actually I hadn't even seen in the Horizon League that they were up this high so far, but I've been seeing the last few nights on people's stories on Snapchat from Youngstown State just that this house has been packed in Youngstown. I can't wait to get to go to one here in the next couple of weeks. But continuing to move along. This is probably our best game, and surprisingly, this is pretty one-sided when it comes to the matchup predictor on ESPN's BPI. They're giving an 84.4% chance to the Kansas Jayhawks to beat the Colorado Buffaloes. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, that is a lot to give to one side. And I think with that one-sided of a pick, it really opens the door for Colorado upset because no one's expecting it. Colorado started the season 7-1 at home. It's in Colorado. Kansas 1-0 on the road. So this is only their second true road game of the season. Last one came against St. John's. They won it 95-75. I'm looking for this team to defend home court. Obviously, they're going to have to watch out for Kansas's guard, Ochai Agbaji. I mean, he's averaging 22 points per game on 56.1% shooting. So he's going to be a dangerous weapon. If they make him be the only guy that beats him, though, Colorado stands a chance. Yeah,
and I'm looking at this article here, Kansas knowing that they can't take Colorado for granted, but, it's easy to say that going in, and you're at a Pac-12 arena where we just talked about they're starting to play better basketball as a conference. I'm going to take an upset here and go with Colorado. I know not a lot of people are expecting it, but I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing from them. I said they're 9-3. They have some decent wins. they have some losses that you can't really penalize them for. UCLA, that's number 5 team in the country. That's okay to lose, but I kind of like the way they're playing, and I think they're going to take care of home court and win it.
I'd like to see the upset here, but, I'm going to take Kansas in this game. You pulled the upset. We can't both go taking them here. I think that's a little bit dangerous to do, especially when we just talked about how amazing this Kansas team is on offense. I mean, they're shooting 51%. And their defense, they've been averaging 7.7 steals, 4.5 blocks. They're assisting out the building, 17.3 assists per game. And you've seen these last few games, they've really started stepping up on offense. I mean, Iona, St. John's, and Mizzou, 3 out of the last 5 games, they went over 90 points. And I'm looking for them to do that again here. I'm expecting a big night out of Kansas. I'm taking the Jayhawks to avoid the upset on the road. If they want to be that top 10 team this year, this is the win they need to get. So I'm taking desperation in terms of Kansas here, because I think they're kind of in a desperation mode when it comes to winning this game, because you kind of see what's coming up on the schedule, and you might know it's going to be hard for this Big 12 this season. You're going to see them tear each other apart. They know they need these wins out of conference, get some credit to the Big 12 coming out. So that way, if they do destroy themselves in the Big 12 season, they're still going to be able to fall back on that out-of-conference schedule and go, hey, Big 12 played great out of conference, kind of what we've done with the Big 10 the last few years. They play great out of conference, destroy each other in conference. Big 12 is going to have to do the same thing this year, because I feel like they are going to shred each other to bits this season.
Yeah, and if Colorado wants to pull the upset like I'm talking about, they're going to have to, their leading rebounders out-rebounding Kansas leading rebounder by 2 a game. So they're going to have to get rebounds, not give Kansas second chance opportunities. They want to win this game. And I think that's something they could do at home. You often see guys more juiced up at home, especially in college basketball. So right. I'm going Buffalo.
All right. Well, one more game to get down to. UConn Huskies on the road take on Marquette Golden Eagles in the Pfizer V Forum, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. UConn right now given a 68.6% chance to win this game. Not 100% on this. You've seen Marquette play some great basketball, but they have lost 3 out of the last 5. UConn, though, they've lost 2 out of their last 5. 1 to Providence, 1 to West Virginia. Marquette, they lost to Xavier, UCLA, and Wisconsin. I mean, if you're picking 3 teams to lose to, that's not too bad of a 3 list to pick from, and all of them were single-digit deficits. So no blowout so far against Marquette in these last 5. And you've seen the same thing on the side of the UConn. I love this ball game. I think this is going to be a fantastic matchup between these two squads. They're pretty much identical in terms of stats, both 43% shooting, both getting 70-plus points per game. Defense for UConn a little better so far. They're assisting the same, so their blocks are nearly identical. Their steals are 0.1 separated between the two. This is a very close matchup. I wouldn't give a 68.6% chance to UConn in this one. I might give them a 51.2% chance to win this game. I think this is very even. I can't wait for this one.
Yeah, it's pretty dead even matchup here. I mean, with UConn, they got RJ Cole coming in, who's going to try to make it, I think, 9 straight games they said scoring double figures. So hopefully, if he comes out doing that, but also get other guys involved, I think UConn can take this one on the road. And I feel like they are. I'm not really sold on the way Marquette's been playing the last few games. Like you said, losing 4 of the last 5. I thought they were better than that, but, and they can still kind of turn things around. But I like UConn in this matchup with them. But it's dead even.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the way this team started the season as well. They have that win over Illinois. They beat Ole Miss. They beat West Virginia in that first matchup as well. The West Virginia team that obviously just beat UConn not that long ago. They lost to a ranked St. Bonaventure by double digits, and that's the one double-digit loss in the season. But I like the way they played against Wisconsin. And then in the middle of that losing streak, they still find a way to beat Kansas State 64-63. Kansas State team that, isn't too bad so far on the season. I mean, they're 7-3 right now, and their losses have come to Marquette, Illinois, and Arkansas. So that Kansas State team is a serious team this year, not one to be overlooked, and they found a way to win that. Obviously, coming off the loss against Xavier, a team that I've been high on since they beat my Buckeyes. But you know what? I like Marquette to pull this game away. I like the way they've been playing despite the losses. I think they're a more consistent team. I think they're a better team than UConn, and I think they're going to pull this one here.
I can go either way, but I'm not.
It feels very tossed up right now. So I mean, the differential between these two teams is about that much. I think if we were both to go the same way on this one, it would be silly to do so because of how even we think this matchup is going to be. So with that being said, let's continue to move along here. First game for Monday Night Football tonight: Browns versus Raiders. This game obviously postponed from this past weekend. Browns still don't have Stefanski, Case Keenum, or Baker Mayfield starting today. It's going to be the Nick Mullins show, but keep in mind, Nick Mullins has 1 start against the Raiders, and he shredded them. So He has beat this team before. It's a Raiders squad that has kind of been down these last few games. We obviously already picked this game last week, and I'm sticking with my pick. I took the Browns then. I'm sticking with them now. Mike, has your opinion changed despite the fact that no one has been released from this COVID list so far for the Browns?
Not enough for me to change my pick, no. You still have Nick Chubb. I mean, they're going to have to use him a lot more than they have been because that's really all they have on offense right now with Nick Mullins. But,
yeah,
I mean, he
Mullins,
has experience.
His job is going to be catch the football and hand it off. That's what he has to do.
They might have to pull a Patriots on the Raiders here in this one. But it's just something
honestly,
about.
I mean, they have the guys to do it. I mean, you look at that entire running back room between Nick Chubb, obviously Kareem Hunt, not available. I don't know the status of guys like Dearness Johnson, John Kelly out of UCLA, who got some nice carry in Dearness Johnson's big game as well. So they have guys that can step up. It's just a matter of who's going to be there for him this week. I obviously got confidence in my Brownies to pull it. So obviously, no one's switching their pick here. I'm imagining Matt's going to stick with the Browns too. Obviously, he's not here to make his pick, but he made it last week, so I'll let it stand. Browns across the board once again. Let's go into our regularly scheduled game here for tonight, though. Vikings versus the Bears. This game, I really like this matchup between these two teams. With the way you've seen the Vikings been up and down, it's been a roller coaster year, and I don't know what it is. Something about the Bears in these last few weeks. I just got a feeling, man. I mean, it was a close game against the Cardinals. Not that bad of a game against the Packers. Their offense went off. And Justin Fields, 224 yards on 18 of 33. He's got to clean up the interceptions, and that's going to come with more experience. And I don't think the Bears should go away from letting this guy be their starter. He is their starter. He's going to be Chicago's next quarterback. They need to just let him stick with it. They have to find a running identity, though. Don't force Justin Fields to be your end-all guy. And I think they're going to come out with a vengeance here. I don't like the Vikings' rush defense too much. I think they can bring pressure in the pass, and that's going to put Justin Fields under some pressure. But I really like Chicago in this matchup. On the other side, though, Vikings, I mean, they've been having a lot of success in recent weeks, but they've been so up and down that you never know what you're going to expect out of this team. I mean, they lose to the Lions. They lose to the 49ers. They beat the Packers. They beat the Chargers, and they beat the Steelers. But, I mean, you look at this team, and you're like, I don't know what the hell is going on in Minnesota because it's a different team every week.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's so hard to pick them. And I don't mean to keep making the same joke, but it's a primetime game. You know how the Vikings are in that. But
that makes this simple. I'm not taking the Vikings.
But seriously, though, with the Bears, it's, their offense putting up 22 against the Cardinals, who their defense is kind of not the same, but still a formidable defense.
Down here, Cardinals lost to the Lions.
I know.
What the NFL this season is insane.
It doesn't make any sense.
I can't even rationalize it right now. It's just insane. We'll get to that a little later into the week. Some of the other games that went on around the NFL. That'll actually, let me look here. That'll be on Tuesday's show, the NFL recap. A lot of football and stuff going on this week. So make sure you stay tuned all week.
Yeah, but I mean, going back to the Bears, though, I mean, that's not. We talk about their defense being the strength of their team, and it hasn't been that the last few weeks. Giving up 22 against Cardinals, giving up 33 against Cardinals, 45 against the Packers. So their offense is stepping up, and now their defense isn't playing as it should have been for a young team with a young quarterback and a young offense that doesn't really have much on offense. But not to go back to the Vikings joke about primetime games, but I'm kind of with you. I like the Bears in this one at home. They come close the last 2 weeks. I think they get one tonight.
Well, yeah, pardon me there. I was muted on accident. But what I was saying, these last few weeks, it felt like they've actually started to change. When it was still a question mark between Dalton and Justin Fields, you felt these two guys just kind of controlling an offense that wasn't theirs. Neither one of those guys fit the offensive field. Since they have committed to Justin Fields and they've let him control this offense, they started to build it around him in these last few weeks. And you feel that with the way he's performing, he's now getting a lot more yardage, a lot more touchdowns. Yeah, the interceptions are still coming. That is going to happen with these young guys. So they've actually finally changed. They're not a one-trick pony anymore where they're just going to do one thing, and that's going to be having Justin Fields step back and then run the ball. He can throw the football, and they're designing routes that are shorter for him, letting him adapt to the speed of the game. He made a mistake early in the year saying, oh, it wasn't actually that fast for me, and then he got popped the next week. I think you've seen it these last few weeks. The game has actually slowed down for him. And the way he's reading defenses now, the offensive line, still awful. They really need a lineman in this year's draft, and I hope they pick one. But you've seen them change their routes, allowing Justin Fields to throw a lot shorter routes, kind of what New England does, what the Saints do, run short yardage plays, and allow them just to play old school football. 3 yards in a cloud of dust can still win if you do it right. And I think that's what the Bears have been trying to get Justin Fields adapted into the NFL system a little better. And I think that's what's going to happen again, and I got the Bears to take it.
I got it.
All right. Well, I guess that ends the NFL segment of today's show. Next up, NBA 76ers versus Celtics tonight, 7:30 p.m. Philadelphia and Boston, both 15-15. Both teams really have been a dud so far in the season. You look at what we expected out of these groups. Obviously, 76ers have been without Ben Simmons, but I don't really think that's any excuse because this team was playing just fine, and now you've seen them in these last few just really fall off the rocker. Last time these two teams met, December 1st, 88-87 for Boston. That is terrible between these two squads. So, I think you look at what these teams are offering. Seth Curry is the leading scorer right now for the 76ers. He was in that last matchup. So I'm looking for this team to do something. I don't have faith in either one of these groups to actually be able to win a basketball game, but it's one of the best ones, most even matchups coming on tonight. So, Mike, what are your thoughts?
It's the same thing with the 76ers with Philadelphia that we talked about last week. It's, I'm kind of getting tired of hearing the Ben Simmons stuff. It's like you played 30 games without him. We know what we're getting with you. So I don't want to hear about that anymore. If he's not there.
He ain't there.
You got to keep rolling with what you got. You got to keep rolling. You get wins. I think they had that one against.
They're on a 3-game losing skid right now, and
but the last one they had was
the Warriors.
State. Yeah,
right.
So you've shown you could beat good teams, but you're not winning other games that you should be winning, and that's the same thing with Boston. That's why these teams are so even. But it's been the story of Boston the last couple of years now, right? We've been hearing the same thing with them, but again, you picked a pretty evenly matched one. It's a game we talked about, like you said. I think the last time they played, I think we might have talked about that once. It just sounds
we might have. These teams have just been pretty much neck and neck all season long. It's been nearly impossible to pick one of them to be able to be more consistent over the other. And I think that's exactly what you saw last time. It was a 1-point game that went to the Celtics. And this time around, I have a feeling this actually probably goes the other way. You see a lot of times when you have even teams that they end up splitting the season series along the way. I think game 2 of their matchup, I have a feeling goes 76ers way. That's what I'm going to pick. I'm interested to see what these two teams can do coming off of it. They meet again January 14th. So we'll probably take another look at this game in a few weeks. Then February 15th, their final matchup of the year. I imagine we'll be looking at this one again another 2 times down the season because of how tight these teams have gone. And when you look in the standings right now, they do control what's going on with the play-in tournament. Celtics are at 7, 76ers are at 8, and you have teams behind them that are pretty much the same record, even above them. Wizards are 16-15. The Hornets are 16-16. Raptors and the Hawks are both 14-15. And then you have 2 13-win teams in the Knicks and Pacers, who are really just 3-4 games away from being right up there in the discussion. Right now, the Celtics and the 76ers control what happens with the Eastern Conference. If they fall out, can you talk about the chaos that's going to happen in the Eastern Conference playoffs when our top teams are the Nets, Bulls, and Cavs? Talk about freaking ridiculous. What century are we in? Because I don't know. And after that, it would go Bucks, Heat, Wizards. You're not talking about primetime teams like, the Knicks, the 76ers, the Celtics, these teams that have been there these last, 8, 10 years, or 20 years for Boston. When's the last time they didn't make the playoffs with this amount of talent? This is unprecedented for these teams, and they control right now what happens in the NBA. So that's why we were paying so close attention to what these teams are doing. And, as I said, Celtics took the last one. I got the 76ers to take this one. Mike? Yeah,
Celtics took last one. I'm kind of was leaning towards Philly, but like you said in one of the other games we did, games are this close. I'm going to go the other way and pick Boston. I don't really know why. I don't really know why to pick either team, honestly. But
no, these teams are just so neck and neck. It's a coin flip last time. And as I said, Boston won at 80-87. I'm taking 76ers to take the next one. And then probably I'll go Celtics on the next one unless Celtics take this one too. So it's a coin flip right now.
I guess like if somewhat of a reason, lately they're playing better basketball. They beat the Knicks, but the Knicks aren't what they were last year. They didn't lose by a whole lot against the Warriors. They only lost by 4 at home, and then they beat the Bucks before that. So they played some better opponents and played better against them. So I guess I'll go Boston for that reason.
All right, well, let's finish out the show here, Mike. NHL, all games but one have been postponed. We're going to talk about the Ducks and Oilers game, but that one put on hold. So the only one we got, still a pretty darn good one, Minnesota Wild versus the Dallas Stars. 19-8-2 is this Wild team. They've been great. 14-12-2 is Dallas. I mean, they're just on the edge of 500. They're actually pretty down right now in the Western Conference Central Division. They're the third worst team technically, but they need better defense, frankly. 75 goals for, 81 goals against, and you've seen the Wild 108 goals for, one of the highest marks we've seen so far in the NHL. They've only allowed 85, so their defense has done a great job. They have one of the highest differentials in the league behind Calgary and the Avalanche. I believe they are the highest. So, I mean, this team has continued, well, at least in the Western. You still have the Hurricanes and the Capitals doing really great out of the Eastern side. But, I mean, I've just seen this Wild team not make those mistakes every single time. You talk about these top teams kind of – once you get to this point in the season, the NHL, you see the top teams just kind of cement themselves and not really have a problem. They lost in a shootout 4 days ago on Thursday to the Sabres. That was a question mark. And, they're on a 3-game losing streak. I look for them to get back in the winning column. You don't see teams stay down very long in the NHL when they have the best talent around. So I'm taking the Wild in this one. I'm looking for a bounce-back win, get back in this win column.
Yeah, I was just reading about that too, about their 8-game winning streak they had snapped. I think they get back on track tonight. I think they're going to win this one, and it's they're one of the better teams in the league right now, especially in the Western Conference. But you got to like the way they're playing. I know you like to talk about scoring. They're scoring the puck. They're really not doing much wrong. And just with Dallas, they're good, but it's not like their consistency. That's the problem right now.
Their defense has struggled, and that's what bothers me against a team like Minnesota.
Yeah, and then when you're coming in a home game against a team that does score the way Minnesota does, and your defense is struggling, that's cause for concern. Not to say it can't happen, but give me Minnesota in this one.
All right. Well, that's another week started here. Thank you all for tuning in once again to the Casual Sports Podcast. This is week 15 on YSNlive.com. I want to thank you again for tuning into this show every day. I mean, I know it's hard, especially this weekend, holidays. Obviously, you can see you got the holiday setup going on.
Yep.
But we appreciate anytime you can stop on by. We're going to be pre-recording a few episodes here for the week. So every day you probably won't be able to get involved with us. Next time you want to be involved with the show live, they'll come back Wednesday, 2 to 3 p.m. All other days this week, though, will be pre-recorded. So if you want to interact with us today and Wednesday, your last chance to do so before the holidays. But if this is the last time you see us, happy holidays to everybody. Hope you guys stay safe. Have a wonderful holiday season. I've been Alec Caberna. That's Mike Wolfgang.
By the way, Tulsa will
hopefully be back on the – oh, cool. Matt Morrison will be back on the show later this week. What is the score?
7-7 with 8:30 to go in the first, but that's just a scoring update.
There you go. Live scoring updates on the Casual Sports Podcast. Wonderful.
Yep.
Well, Power Hour coming up next. Make sure to tune into that. As for us, we'll see you all tomorrow.